Derbyshire's core design would bring their final Amiga game to the A1200 and CD32 before moving on to newer platforms in 1995 with the isometric shoot-'em-up Skeleton Crew. With its 2000 AD style artwork and off the back of quality releases such as Universe and Heimdall 2, hopes were high for the game engineered exclusively for AGA chipsets. Delving into the setup, the Deadly Enforcement Aggressive Destruction Incorporation, or Dead Inc. for short, and led by the maniacal moribund Cadaver, unleash a wave of cryogenic mutations on an unwitting populace. In order to stop the destruction, it's up to the Military Ascertainment Department Special Operatives, aka MAD, to bring Cadaver down and reclaim Monstro City. Acronyms abound, and with more C's substituted for K's than a Mortal Kombat convention, the manual's description and comic strip gives a good excuse for the darkly designed, titular gang of morbid mercenaries known as the Skeleton Crew to shoot cretins and robots in the face. Booting this up, a moody title screen and menu is followed by a clean, well-presented character carousel where you can choose your crew member out of spine, rib and joint. While our protagonists fall into the familiar categories for the time, fat, fine or female, their futuristic dystopian design is undoubtedly stylish. Blasting our way into the first area, the comic book aesthetic is carried over into the detailed and chunky sprite work. The vibrant colour palette and 3D perspective creates a visually appealing game space to navigate. Environments are distinctive, and wild swings in colour schemes denote each new area you progress to, all of whom possess a unique atmosphere. However, there's very little in the way of level interactivity, making them feel a little barren, apart from the odd explosive crate, terminal to destroy, or hive of blue insects to contend with. 8-way scrolling is present despite not really being used to the fullest, although for the most part, it is smooth. Frame rates dip occasionally during frantic return fire contests, but there is a real sense of fluidity as you traipse around shooting mutants in the hunt for an exit. The enemy design is equal to those of our anti-heroes, with their death animation being particularly well done as they devolve into a sloppy mess. More variety would be welcomed, as later enemies are obvious reskins of those found in the earlier stages, apart from those monstrous frogs. Projectiles are oversized and imposing as you swap between laser bolts and mines, but lack impact as they pummel into the chest of your foes. While boss fights are few and far between, their models look great even with limited animation cycles. The team at Core maintain their high standards in creating a world that wears its sci-fi influences on its sleeve, and it's easy to see why many in the Amiga press were hyped for its release. The isometric viewpoint is reminiscent of games like the Escape from the Planet of Robot Monsters, but ups the ante, taking full advantage of the AGA hardware in realising its graphic novel aspirations. With an incredible sense of style, Martin Everson's soundtrack hones that further. While some have lamented that the music is slightly out of place, I feel it works. In-game music is lacking on the A1200, replaced by a more ambient offering, but the CD32 version's dark, jazzy trip-hop draws from artists such as DJ Crush. The pounding drum loops, winding bass lines and sharp piano chords gives the game an off-kilter vibe, foregoing the harsher up-tempo electronic blasts that would normally be associated with a game of this ilk. The high production value of the score wouldn't be amiss on a Ninja Tunes compilation, and help cover up some of the more lackluster elements of the Sonics. While grunts, moans and gunfire are competent, they can grate and are a lot more tiresome in the soundtrack-like A1200 version, and when there's more projectiles spraying around the place than a Ron Jeremy double bill, it gets old very fast. The breakbeats and scratches are the highlight of the audio package, compensating for the scant amount of variety in the sound effects. It serves to heighten the aesthetics and provides a more hedonistic feel than many would expect. Skeleton Crew's gameplay loop is familiar and linear. Shoot everything, destroy a few terminals and find the exit. There's the odd bit of loot to find and an occasional extra life, but none of its core elements run particularly deep. As mentioned previously, the levels look distinctive, but they don't do enough in terms of layout to maintain a relatively high amount of interest. The grid-based design seems empty in certain stages, and the sign posted for exits or rooms is sometimes non-existent, as you meander around trying to find where to go, only to realise a black space that appears to be part of the scenery is actually a doorway to another part of the level. Some attempt has been made to inject some variety, such as clear the arena minigames, but overall, the structure feels flat and very designed by committee, with most areas finishing with an anticlimactic fade to black. Despite the tedium of the level objectives, Skeleton Crew takes a slightly different approach to its quickfire shooting. Each of our characters' upper torsos can rotate independently of the legs, which should give you a greater degree of accuracy and freedom. At times the combat feels frantic as you glide around dispatching mutants while changing weapons on the fly. Characters and enemies move fluidly within the combat area, forcing you to retreat and then advance when you've thinned out their numbers. When it works, it really works, but more frequently than not, it's frustrating, especially if you're unlucky enough to only have a one-button joystick. Playing the CD32 version mitigates some of the built-in resentment of the over and under corrections as you spin your character around to aim. The developers must be given credit for trying to overcome the Amiga's limited inputs by giving the player a variety of control schemes for one-button paupers, but even with a two-button joystick on the A1200, you'll still have to use keys for actions such as jumping, forcing you into some monstrous finger contortions. Even with the advantages of the CD32 joypad, your line of fire doesn't always tally with the enemy position, but this is a minor niggle. Each character has the same two guns but plays slightly differently. Joint's weapon fires slightly larger projectiles but he's slower. Spine is the all-rounder, with the female Rib being the lightest on her feet. While the shooting feels solid enough, the lack of any power-ups means the action never escalates beyond what you encounter in the first level. Skeleton Crew is a very challenging game and you will die a lot as you try to master the controls and familiarise yourself with the level layouts. However, persevere and you will be rewarded as you decimate grunts running circles around their basic AI. With only one continue, which sends you back to the beginning of the sector you died in, it does feel a little stingy. The game would benefit from the use of the password system found in the Mega Drive version, but is strangely absent from both Amiga conversions. The few boss battles you come across are relatively easy to work out and are more pedestrian than spectacle, and this is Skeleton Crew's biggest weakness apart from the A1200 controls. It all feels very safe despite its clearly ambitious beginnings. The two-player mode does bring a little more longevity to the fun factor and actually makes the game quite a bit easier, but doesn't introduce any co-op functionality, so gameplay will soon fall into a familiar routine. As such, Core Design's effort was met with mixed reviews on release. Its curiosities failed to engage the player and gradually become tedious during its short duration. It's certainly a game you'll want to like more than you actually do. Skeleton Crew is the epitome of style over substance, and dare I say it, feels a little bare bones, which is a real shame when it was Core Design's last game for our beloved Amiga. It had great potential, and with the inclusion of some of the originally planned features, could have been a top tier shoot 'em up. As it stands, it's hampered by a lack of gameplay variance, a sense of being rushed to market, and a confused control scheme.